Okay, welcome everyone. Happy Monday, and welcome to Ethics, Law, and Leadership in a Digital Age. We have a distinguished panel of experts who will try to guide us today in what is understanding AI and the law and ethics. Um, so everyone, thank you for joining. My name is Dr. Jamie Franco. I'm the director of the Institute for Ethical Leadership here at St. Thomas University, and we work very closely with the St. Thomas College of Law. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to today's panel discussion, again, on ethics, law, and leadership in the digital age. As technology accelerates and artificial intelligence reshapes every sector, from healthcare and education to business and government, leaders are navigating a landscape filled with both extraordinary opportunity and profound ethical and legal challenges. The choices we make today will shape not only our organizations, but also the integrity and trust of the systems future generations will inherit. We are fortunate to have with us an exceptional group of experts, a leader from the Office of the Inspector General of Palm Beach County, and a panel of distinguished attorneys who both teach and practice law here at St. Thomas University. Together, they bring a powerful blend of legal insight, practical evidence, and ethical perspective. We're going to follow this agenda. We have obviously the opening remarks. Then we're going to continue with Father Coffey. He's going to lead us in prayer. Then we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, brief introductions of all our panelists, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty, the question for the panel, and then we'll open it up to commenting questions via the Q&A function in Teams for everyone who's joined today. Father, are you on Zoom or on Teams, excuse me? Let me see if he's there. Father, let me allow Mike. Okay, Father, I've enabled your mic and I added you as a presenter. If you would be so kind to lead us in prayer.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Father. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't know why the video is not on. Do you know?
For purposes of where we're at right now, it's okay if you just lead us verbally in prayer. We
Okay,
have, we have on the screen a hand
I see. Okay,
pointed in the sky. Yeah.
all right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and
Good
thank you
afternoon.
for the opportunity. Beginning always in the name who has gathered us, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, this afternoon we come before your presence in the name of your Son, Jesus, humbly asking to send your Holy Spirit to illumine our hearts and minds, always to discern your will in our lives and live according to your divine will, Lord, because we are convinced that you want what is best for each one of us. Bless this gathering now, this dialogue on the ethics of we'll look at artificial intelligence and technology that is available today, the tremendous power, technological power that we have at our hands, but also the legal dimensions of this, which we know, Lord, that a good positive law follows from a natural law, and natural law is a reflection of your divine law or guidance to each one of us, precisely as you have created us in your image and likeness. Please continue to bless all our efforts at St. Thomas University as we strive for excellence and to engage our students in the teaching and learning process so necessary today to be a part of the formation of the minds and hearts that will be ethical leaders, not only in the United States, but throughout the world. As we look at the situation in the world, we also pray, Lord, for the gift of peace in our hearts and that we may be agents of peace to the people who surround us. This we pray in the name of Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Father, very much.
My pleasure.
All right, and then we'll continue with the Pledge of Allegiance. And you can say it to yourself. If you'd like to put your right hand over your heart, that would be fine as well. And I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you for that. And then we'll continue with a disclosure. So this is a legal disclosure, and I'll read it verbatim, as I don't want to miss any particular word from the disclosure. The information provided in this webinar is intended for educational and informational purposes only. Although the session addresses topics related to ethics, law, and leadership in the digital age, the panelists are not providing legal advice, legal opinions, or professional counsel. Participants should not rely on the discussion as a substitute for guidance from qualified legal professionals. For advice specific to your circumstances, please consult your own attorney or appropriate legal counsel. All righty, so let me go in with the introductions. And like I said earlier, is that each of our panelists has a wealth of experience, and we could probably be here all day if I were to read everyone's bio. So on that note, what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you at least a little bit of information regarding each of the panelists so you can see where they're coming from, their perspective, and their formulation of ideas, and more importantly, the responses to the questions that I'm going to have them try to answer today during this 1-hour webinar. So first and foremost, if you look to your left of your screen, you have Ms. Calinthia Dillard, ESQ. She serves as General Counsel and Deputy Inspector General for the Palm Beach County Office of Inspector General. After graduating from Clemson University, magna cum laude, and the Florida State University College of Law, cum laude, she relocated to Palm Beach County, Florida to clerk at the 4th District Court of Appeal. Thereafter, she practiced civil litigation at private law firms and worked as a senior attorney for the School District of Palm Beach County, the 10th largest school district in the U.S. Ms. Dillard is a certified Inspector General, Inspector General Auditor, and Inspector General Investigator, and holds a leadership certificate from eCornell. In March 2024, Ms. Dillard co-chaired the Palm Beach County Bar Association's Bench Bar Conference, and her accolades go on and on. We'll switch over to Professor Keith Fisher. If you look to the center of your screen, that's an image of Professor Fisher. Professor Fisher is an honors graduate of Princeton University and Georgetown University Law Center with many years of experience in large law firm private practice, and as a full-time professor. Professor Fisher joined the St. Thomas University Law faculty in August of 2025. Previously, he was the Distinguished Fellow and Director of the Institute for Ethics and Professionalism at the National Judicial College. Professor Fisher is a nationally known expert in several areas, ranging from legal and judicial ethics to domestic international financial services regulation, anti-corruption, anti-money laundering, and anti-trafficking. He has served as a member of the ABA Standing Committee on Ethics and Professional Responsibility and is a chair of the Professional Responsibility Committee of the ABA Business Law Section. And I'll move over to Professor, also known as Jane. That is the last photo to your right of your screen. Professor Jane joined St. Thomas University College of Law as an assistant professor of law in 2024. Professor has scholarly interests, include financial regulation, consumer protection, privacy and data protection, artificial intelligence, emphasis added, and international law. Prior to joining STU Law, Professor was a Hauser Global Postdoctoral Fellow at NYU School of Law, affiliated with the Program of Corporate Compliance and Enforcement. At NYU School of Law, Professor Jane researched the comparative institutional structure of financial regulation and the independence of financial regulatory authorities. Professor Jane received her SJD, which is the PhD in law, for those of you who are not familiar with that designation, from the University of Virginia School of Law in 2020. And then we'll turn to, last but not least, if you turn your eyes to your screen, it's on the lower section of your screen, to Professor O'Toole, is an accomplished lawyer, jurist, and educator with a distinguished career spanning the U.S. and the Middle East. Before joining St. Thomas University College of Law, she served as the elected prosecuting attorney for Ashtabula County, Ohio, where she led a team handling complex criminal and civil matters. In that role, she represented the counties, 40 civil entities, prosecuted all major felony cases, included capital matters. Professor O'Toole has extensive international experience serving as an adjunct lecturer at the Abu Dhabi Judicial Academy and as a judicial member and legal consultant to the Abu Dhabi Judicial Department in the United Arab Emirates. She was one of only 2 American judges appointed to the expert chamber of the Abu Dhabi Commercial Court, where she adjudicated complex commercial disputes and advised on the integration of international best practices. Her work contributed to the World Bank's Doing Business initiatives to enhance the UAE's global standing in economic efficiency and judicial transparency. Like I said, we can continue speaking about each of the distinguished panelists' experiences in bio, but for brevity purposes, really realizing that we have about 45 minutes left, we're going to jump into the questions. So for those of you curious about today's format, what I did is, in preparation for today's webinar, I sent them a list of questions. And the 4 panelists vetted the questions, and we came up with 4 solid questions versus the 10 or plus that I initially had suggested. And they're like, wait a minute, 10 questions, that's too much. We're going to, as it is, we're going to barely scratch the surface. So thank you for reining me in and keeping me true to today's webinar. So we'll start. And the first question would be, this is for obviously question for the panelists, is where do you see the biggest gray areas emerging at the intersection of AI, law, and ethics? And how should leaders practically navigate them? So I'll open it up to all 4 of you, in no rhyme or reason, if you would please be so kind to share your knowledge, your response to that particular question. And again, I'll repeat it. Where do you see the biggest gray areas emerging at the intersection of AI, law, and ethics, and how should leaders practically navigate them? Who can give it a try? Who can try answering question number 1 from our panel?
I can start.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
All right. We all know that AI is growing, right? And it's growing exponentially. So the question is, how do we manage it within our present legal system? The particular gray zones are that the capabilities are advancing faster than our statutory frameworks, creating compliance ambiguities, as well as a patchwork of ways in which we are trying to regulate it or get our arms around it. It seems essential that ethics-based governance models, which include transparency, fairness, and accountability, are now considered essential complements to our black letter law. So in other words, this isn't going to be just another subject matter. This is going to integrate basically into everything we do. We're going to have to somehow manage it. And, it obviously, we need to start categorizing it and figuring out, do we have high risk AI? What kind of oversight does it require? But more importantly, we're going to have to build a culture around training, understanding, and navigation of it that will allow us to use its great capabilities and at the same time control, obviously, the issues that, have come to the fore pretty, readily, given its recent expansion. Thank you.
Do you mind if I go next?
Go ahead. Yes, that's Ms. Dillard.
So very few people I encounter actually know what IGs do. So if you give me some grace and let me kind of fill in just briefly what we do. The first effective IG, Inspector General, actually dates back to George Washington. So the first IG was someone who worked with George Washington to make sure that his troops were performing effectively. So as you can imagine, with a history that long, we've had to grow and adapt over the history of our country and adjust to the needs of how governments operate and how our technology has developed. So in essence, what our office does in Palm Beach County, we do investigations, we do audits, and we oversee procurement practices for the county government as well as 39 municipalities. So our jurisdiction is actually much broader than most IGs. On the federal federal level. They're usually embedded within one agency, but we consider ourselves, independent because our jurisdiction is so broad. So we're kind of having a three-part conversation amongst, the IGs nationally, about, how do we approach AI in three parts. One, looking at how do we integrate it into how we operate and how we function, because, there are a lot of opportunities to use AI to be more efficient within our agencies themselves. With respect to maybe, helping to draft documents, transcribe interviews, and things of that nature. But then two, we're looking at, because we do audits and investigations, we're collecting a lot of evidence. So how do we train our staff to, look for deep fakes or, evidence that's been manipulated through the metadata or documents that have been revised? So we're looking at that aspect. Additionally, looking at how to audit other governments and how they integrate AI in their systems. We hear stories about local governments using AI for, permitting, say, reviewing applications or grants. Are they coming up with governance standards that provide transparency and how, that decision-making process is done? I mean, I think AI is a helpful tool, but, we can't do away from the human element in that decision-making process. So, we're still trying to navigate that role. There aren't a lot of IG offices, quite frankly, that have developed, governance standards. So, we're having that conversation and thinking about training, coming up with appropriate uses of AI. How do we teach our employees to know how to use appropriate prompts, how to read the output? I think it's very important to make sure that your staff has appropriate knowledge, that they can identify if the outputs are not appropriate or are biased or skewed, and things of that nature. So I'm sure we'll talk later in the conversation about hallucinations and those type of things. So I think there are a lot of gray areas that we're still trying to navigate with respect to how to implement it and how to figure out how to analyze the current legal framework as we use AI.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to opine? I do have a follow-up question for Ms. Dillard, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but for those of you who are not aware, the Institute for Ethical Leadership here at St. Thomas works very closely with, if I'm not mistaken, there are 7 commissions on ethics and public trust in the entire state of Florida, and we're working very closely with the Miami-Dade Commission with Mr. Ignacio and the City of Naples as well, on topics such as this, AI and the law and ethics. And Ms. Diller had reached out to me and she said, well, let's work on a project together to find out what are we doing in Florida in terms of AI regulation, policy, guidances, et cetera, on a municipality by municipality basis. And Calinthia, could you share kind of what that process is and what we ultimately found out maybe like 2 weeks ago based on an exercise that we did, a very quick exercise that we did?
So we're actually in the process of trying to compile AI policies throughout the state. And it probably doesn't come as a surprise for most of you that there isn't a lot out there. People are interested in AI. They're talking about AI. I think people recognize potential benefits, but there's also some hesitancy because, we don't want to roll out AI before we've come up with a governance structure. We don't want to, adopt AI just for the sake of it. There should be, a needs assessment. How can governments best utilize the products that are available, and how to come up with a product that not only best meets those needs, but also fits within the cost structure of local government. We don't always have the same assets that some of the private industry has. So it's been, a slow process, but we are doing that analysis right now There are only a few municipalities throughout the entire state of Florida who have rolled out these policies. And as I mentioned before, in conversations that I've had with other inspectors general, they're still in the process of trying to figure out, the best way to implement or integrate AI into their operations. But I, tell everybody it's important to work with your IT team, your legal department, and your end users to come up with appropriate governance structure before you and put those guardrails in place before you implement the AI systems.
Thank you for that. My follow-up question is that I have several attorney friends, and quite frankly, the legal profession is unsure of the ultimate impact, I guess, if you want to use the word ultimate impact of AI on the legal profession. And you have some skeptics, practicing attorneys that say, and let me shine the light on the proverbial elephant in the room, is that they believe that AI will replace what attorneys do. And I'd like to hear your professional opinion on that idea. Should attorneys kind of stop with that, that AI will not replace attorneys, or should they be weary of that notion that perhaps if they're not versed and on top of artificial intelligence, and as a legal profession, if academic standards are infused in the curriculum, someday that could become a possibility?
I don't
Calinthia,
think
what do
there's
you
any
think?
danger anytime soon of AI replacing people who are in the business of exercising professional judgment, and by that I mean not just lawyers, but other professionals, medical professionals, and accounting professionals, and so forth. AI is something of a misnomer because it's not really intelligence, at least not now. What it is it's mammoth and self-training capable models using enormous amounts of data to put together output. It compiles data. It will then generate statistically probable outputs, but that's not the same as the exercise of judgment. So I don't see that as a risk. By the same token, however, there already is a fair amount of attention being paid to this on the ethical front. A number of states, at least a dozen, maybe more by now, have issued opinions, advisory opinions. The ABA in 2024 issued an ethics advisory opinion, and they've identified those areas of legal ethics and professional responsibility which are affected by AI, at least as it exists now. Don't forget, we're dealing really with a moving target, because probably by the time this webinar is over, some parts of AI, as we understand it, will have been overtaken by advances in technology. So it's very difficult. I mean, I think the EU, for example, has done an amazing job with their extraordinarily comprehensive AI Act from 2024, which we couldn't possibly even hope to scratch the surface of in multiple hours of webinar time. But even that is shooting at a moving target. In terms of what's going on in legal ethics, I think that most of these states, and Florida, by the way, since we're in Florida, is one of the early states that issued an advisory opinion that allows lawyers to use a generative AI with a number of very significant caveats and concerns, including pitfalls relating to confidentiality, pitfalls relating to lawyer advertising, to keeping legal fees and costs down, to advising clients and getting their informed consent with respect to the uses of AI, and so on and so forth. There are probably at least a half a dozen topics in legal ethics that are covered by that opinion and by other opinions. They aren't all in lockstep. The ABA addresses some things that Florida doesn't, and vice versa. I think California was the first one out of the box to issue an opinion. So there's a lot going on, and I would expect that this will continue. But the problems with AI continue to multiply. It seems that no matter how many scandals there are involving lawyers who file things in court containing what are, I think, charitably called hallucinations, and perhaps less charitably could be called fraud, have they continue to happen. I just read about one 2 weeks ago. And even a couple of federal judges have had to withdraw opinions because they used law clerks and judicial interns who in turn did their research with AI and produced opinion drafts that contained references to things that simply do not exist, which is a huge embarrassment for the federal judiciary and for any judiciary. So there's a lot of ferment going on, and we're still, unfortunately, in early stages of this, but already we can see that there are a lot of limitations to AI as well as a lot of potential benefits.
Okay, thank you, Professor Fisher. Dr. Jane, you have your hand up.
Right. So I just wanted to follow up with what Professor Fisher just said. So it's we don't have policies yet, or a lot of the government agencies or OIGs or even like our academic policies are not up to date. We haven't created a comprehensive, I guess, AI policy, even in academic plagiarism yet. But the problem is, the biggest problem I see is that the younger people practically everybody out there is already using it. So it's not, I don't think it's a issue of like, oh, should we allow our staff to use this product or that product, or whether we should adopt enterprise models of certain AI products or not. It's not, I think the elephant in the room is that the staff, the students, employees are already out there. Law clerks, law students, we're all using it with no guidance at all. And that creates the problems that Professor Fisher said, like the embarrassing case of the 2 federal judges and the law clerks, the law school students or the law clerks were using these OpenAI or whatever, these already publicly available models, and they created problems like hallucinations. And in this case, specifically, the judges had to respond to U.S. Senator Grassley through official letters. What were their AI policies within their chambers, and looking forward, what will they do? What will they put in place in the future? So for me, since I'm teaching AI seminar in the law school right now, and I know that all professors have different AI policies within their classrooms. But I let my students, first of all, use AI, but disclose that you're using it, and also let's have a transparent talk of like, how are you using it? What prompts are you using? What products are you using? What problems are you facing? And trying to shepherd them into a more ethical use. And but I'm grappling throughout the semester, like, should I let this happen? Like, how much should I let them use AI? What are their ethical parameters? And as an educator, I keep like trying to draw the line between what is plagiarism and what is the student's own work. How can I detect it? Because honestly, as a human being, I think I have limitations in detecting it. So moving forward, I think we should, as like STU or in any corporation, they should, like right now, before they think about like, should we like buy this like AI models or not, like deal with how the AI is used within their employees, their staffs, students, and think of policies, like have an open, transparent discussion with all the stakeholders, including staff, employees, or students, like how are we using it and how should we form ethical, accountable use of AI policies in the future. Right. Thank you.
Wonderful. Professor Tuo.
Yeah, yes, I definitely think it's going to replace legal jobs. The question is going to be, which legal jobs will it replace, right? We've already seen developments, not even with AI, but just the replacement of secretaries or admins, where the lawyers started, creating stuff themselves. Now the administrative staff will be greatly impacted because it's just so easy to use and it's so cheap, right? Anybody can be a genius for $20 a month. This does not mean that they are accurate or correct. And so obviously AI in education, ABA Model Rule 1.1 includes commentary requiring technological competence, but doesn't define the precise limits. I think everyone's kind of trying to figure this out stopgap because the market is so flooded at this time with commercial products. AI is the generic product. I mean, we don't know how many, I mean, right now, just the big companies, right? There are 4 or 5 or 6, but a lot of little competitors are also entering the market with their respective AI products. And so the question is first, in my humble opinion, is we got to decide what we're dealing with, right? Canada's directive on automated decision making has a nice model. Organizations, including judiciary and courts, need to conduct algorithmic impact assessments to find out, to Dr. Who's point, one, who's using it and what are they using it for? But more importantly, what impact does it have on the products and services that we provide? And then the next step, of course, would be, I think, to build compliance matrix and other aspects. But we don't even have, I don't think anybody really even has a grip on what this thing is or what it looks like. It's like we're swimming in a tsunami, I think. Thank you.
You're welcome. Colinthia.
Not to, belabor the point, but to go back to the original question, I tend to agree with the other panelists that AI won't necessarily replace lawyers, but it will probably get rid of some of the functions, some of the document review that some of the newer lawyers are doing. Maybe your office doesn't need to hire as many attorneys as you have in the past. But to me, the mere fact that so many people have filed documents with errors in it, with hallucinations in it, tells me we can't leave AI to its own device. A lot of judges have complained that they're getting a lot of filings from pro se litigants who rely on AI, and they give them something that is incoherent, doesn't accurately reflect what the state of the law is. So I do think that you will continue to need that human judgment when it comes to practicing law. And there's also a human element. I mean, clients, often want somebody who understands their situation and not just an output of a product. And, on top of that, AI is sometimes good with analyzing data, but it doesn't necessarily understand how to weigh credibility, how to determine, which facts should be weighed more heavily than the other. So, for those reasons, I don't think it will replace what we do. I think what we have to consider, though, is making sure we implement it in a way that it doesn't minimize our credibility and doesn't violate the law. One thing that comes up over and over again is the, I guess, putting confidential information, for example, into some of these AI platforms. As with lawyers in the IG arena, we have a particular statute that says, everything that we do in our audits and investigations is confidential until that investigation or audit is complete. So we have to make sure our staff is sufficiently knowledgeable that they cannot input confidential data into an open AI platform. There are closed platforms available that some people can purchase. But there was a recent study from Layer X Security Enterprises. They did an AI report this year and found that 77% of the respondents said that they had potentially put confidential information into some of these AI searches, violating whatever their office governance provisions were, potentially violating the law, giving away confidential information on things from trademarks to, social security numbers and things of that nature. So I do agree that we have to analyze, how people are using it and roll out as soon as we can, governance structures that minimize the risks that come with using AI.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Professor Toole.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't take down my thing from last time.
Oh, okay.
I don't have a new one. Sorry,
Okay.
tech glitch.
No worries. Okay, let's move on to question number 2. How should organizations balance innovation with caution when adopting new AI tools that outpace existing legal frameworks? So let me repeat. How should organizations balance innovation with caution when adopting new AI tools and outpacing existing legal frameworks? And I think we alluded to it a little bit, but does anyone have a more direct response in question number 2?
Well, I think Professor Ho has already indicated that the genie is out of the bottle.
Yeah.
So when you combine that with the commercial incentives of those who are in the AI development business, it's going to be very hard to keep the lid on this as we move forward. And already we're seeing some very, very disturbing trends. So I'll give you one. I'm one of those dinosaurs who still reads books and goes to libraries. The students I teach basically get all their information off their mobile phones. They don't even use their laptops as much. And they use tablets and so on and so forth. And so all this information is coming across online, including the way people conduct legal research. So if we just confine ourselves to that, nobody actually goes and looks at law books much anymore unless they're reproduced online. Rather, they use databases and a variety of other tools. And right now, the gold standard in legal research are the two major databases, Lexis and Westlaw. About a year or so ago, year and a half ago, the Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence Center at Stanford University did a research study in which they came up with a very, very shocking statistic. Of those two, which are the gold standard, as I say, for legal research now, and each of which has enormous databases upon which people rely, the AI-assisted legal research tool resulted in an astonishing, in one case, 16%, and in the other case, double that, 33% of hallucinations. So if Lexis and Westlaw's AI-assisted research are producing those percentages of hallucinations, what do the lesser regulated and lesser funded resources have to offer at this time? That is a very, very disturbing statistic. And in terms of what can be done about it, I guess we just have to wait and see. It's astonishing to me why they can't program their own AI to verify what it comes up with against their own databases. You would think that would be kind of a rudimentary programming task. But apparently it hasn't happened, or maybe it's happened since that report came out. I don't know, but these are astonishing problems that arise. Another problem that arises is when you're dealing with these mega data research capabilities, how much in the way of immanent bias or prejudice will get reproduced by AI? AI is researching statistics or researching documents which were created by people who are, of course, imperfect, and many of whom have particular biases or prejudices in their research and in their output. The AI can just readily become as infected by that as anybody else, which is why the courts now and judges from a judicial ethics perspective have to be extraordinarily cautious about using AI tools, for example, to provide input into sentencing practices and recommendations, because a lot of the data in there may be infected by some of these problems.
Very, very interesting. Thank you. So, as I had said at the top of the, excuse me, at the top of the webinar, this is the third webinar that we do here through the Institute of Ethical Leadership. The first one was kind of for the general public, and more of in the tradition of the Catholic tradition. And then the second webinar about a couple, maybe like, what was it, last month? It was on healthcare and AI. And we actually had a lady, a physician surgeon from the American Medical Association, who is responsible pretty much for AI in medicine at the national level with a bioethicist. And what I'm hearing today, I'm seeing a theme emerge in that I think we need to focus from an academic perspective on character formation of students as they're pursuing a law degree, in particular because many of these students start their legal career, and in the case medicine, their medical career at a very young age. I'm not sure what the average law student age is when they matriculate, the first time into law school, but I would venture to imagine in their early 20s, mid 20s. And for those of you who study moral development, ethical development and formation, really an individual doesn't fully develop morally and ethically until their early 30s. And this varies depending on who you read, right? And so I think the theme is, or the lessons that I'm learning from all these webinars is that we really need to focus on judgment and temperance and really pushing students to understand ethics very clearly, and in particular with technologies such as artificial intelligence. And as Professor Fisher had said, what we have today in terms of artificial intelligence isn't necessarily intelligent, right, today, but people forecast within the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have what they call superintelligence. And that notion or that idea of superintelligence is those technologies will, in essence, be smarter than the average human being. And so I guess back to my initial comment is academically and even in practice of attorneys is really the focus on training and character formation in ethics. And I think in the near future, the push will be by each state and even at a national level that attorneys take more classes in ethics because of what we're seeing within the space of artificial intelligence and with what is coming down the pike in terms of superintelligence. That's my 2 cents based on what I've seen for the last couple of months as I'm rolling out these webinars. I don't know if you agree or disagree. If you disagree, I'd love to hear your disagreements on that observation that I've had by facilitating these webinars.
Yeah. Jamie, I have something.
Yes.
So I think you're absolutely right on the ethics piece, but I also think that our students, especially law students, especially business students, folks going into leadership, their leadership role may be conducting the human regulation of AI. They will not only need to be ethical, but they will have to understand how the system works. They will be expected to, because of their age and their youth, to help all of us navigate exactly what this is, maybe work on AI governance boards, implement human, like in the loop oversight, especially for high risk systems, and do the things that are very, very necessary. Maybe that's where the next legal jobs really are, in management and governance of these systems from a human perspective.
That's a great point. I completely agree with you 100%. And I don't know the statistics, but I wish more attorneys were actively involved in pushing back on these AI companies, such as OpenAI, the different chatbots such as ChatGPT, Copilot, Grok, all these companies. I wish there were more pushback. And I hope there is, or maybe not, because I have not read much pushback from the legal profession in terms of these companies and how they're developing and coding AI. I just wish from a collective, more organized perspective that attorneys would band together and say, no, these are the potential legal ramifications, and we're already seeing ethical ramifications of you building these AI systems in a closed black box. And so I completely agree with you, Professor O'Toole, that they need future attorneys and practitioners need to know more about AI governance and how it's being built and all the biases that go into building these applications or these tools, and have it stay at the table from a legal professional perspective that this should not continue, right? So let's, Kalinthi, I'm sorry, you've had your hand up for a little bit.
Yeah, so I actually think that ethics conversation is multifaceted when it comes to AI. I mean, we can look at the actual user. We could talk about students. We can talk about, attorneys. How are they using AI? Are they vetting the materials before they present them as facts, either, in the classroom or in the courtroom, what have you? But I think the second part of that ethics conversation has to do with these companies, as you alluded to. What is the source of the information? What are they using to train the models? We've heard about a lot of the lawsuits with them using copyrighted materials, for example, and kind of where we are with that. Is the information biased? A lot of the training we've learned, particularly with facial recognition software has been, biased from that standpoint. We haven't seen as much transparency as we would like to when it comes to the training side of it. But I will say that I do have some concerns, or I would like to hear more conversation about where we are nationally. The Trump administration released the National AI Plan recently. And, from conversations I've been involved in, a seminar I did with Gartner, for example, stressed how really the goal is to be the worldwide leader in AI and to build more AI data centers. And to what degree will this conversation about bias take a back seat to the ultimate goal of beating, China, or, being first internationally in AI. So I think there's a lot of conversation to be had around the topic of ethics. But I think it's a multifaceted conversation.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And you read my mind, Cynthia. I was going to reference the White House paper on AI, and I haven't studied it that much, so please correct me if I'm incorrect, anyone on the panel, but it seems like this administration, and I'm not being political, has taken AI and basically absolved themselves of the ramifications of the use of AI and really has left it to the states to decide how to deal with it. And that isn't necessarily, in my opinion, the best approach. And I think that's why my call for the legal profession is to come together as a collective one and be a more forceful force in the world to counter that and say, as a profession, we will not tolerate this. Legally, companies, we will not tolerate this type of programming, this type of coding. And so I guess stay tuned to see how that evolves or not. Dr. Jane, you had your hands up?
Right. No, I don't need to answer this question. You can go
Okay.
on to the next round of questions and I'll chip in. But yes,
Okay.
I want to talk about innovation, ethics, and maybe the innovation at the national level, at the international level. I think the competition piece with other nation states, that's the bigger piece actually, that is kind of like the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
That kind of it has a trickle down effect to everything that we do on our desks right now today. So you can like go on to the next question. I'll be happy to add my thoughts later.
I completely agree with you. And I think we're going to have an episode 2 and 3 because we have barely scratched the surface. And just wanted to share for those of you who are not familiar that St. Thomas University over the summer published 7 AI ethical standards. And these are based on the Catholic intellectual tradition. And I've been to several conferences since then, and people have, contacted me and said, hey, listen, I've actually used St. Thomas's 7 AI ethical standards for policy creation or revision, which was it's always a proud moment when someone says, I've used the 7 AI standards that you guys published a couple months ago. And so I completely agree with you, Dr. Jane, in that if we're grappling with these issues here in the US, I just hate to imagine how developing countries are not, and the impact on the marginalized, because they're not necessarily talking, other countries, developing countries are not talking about ethics and morality and artificial intelligence and how it should ethically be used and touched, especially by the marginalized population, which is another conversation, another episode, maybe perhaps episode 2. So thank you for pointing that out, Professor Jane. I know we only have about 20 minutes left, and so I'm going to fast track to the bonus question, because I think that's a question that I've been asked a lot as an ethicist, and the fact that I'm here at St. Thomas University and work very closely with the College of Law. So the bonus question is, we've seen cases where practicing attorneys used AI to draft briefs and submitted them to the courts without proper review. Can someone speak to how this happens and what the professional and ethical ramifications are? And I'll repeat. We've seen cases where practicing attorneys used AI to draft briefs and submitted them to the courts without proper review. Can someone speak to how this happens and what the professional and ethical ramifications are for doing this?
Well, I mean, I think how it happens is that people are lazy and they just cut and paste uncritically from something. You wouldn't do that with, let's say, a paralegal whom you might ask to draft something. If you're a practicing lawyer, you're licensed to practice and you have ethical responsibilities to the courts, to the profession as a whole, to your clients. You wouldn't just uncritically take what they came up with and sign your name to it without verifying it. I don't see from an ethical point of view why anybody should treat AI any differently than one would treat any other non-lawyer or lawyer for that matter under the ABA's model rules 5.1 and 5.3, the duty to supervise, the duty to make sure that what you're putting your name to is accurate to the best of your knowledge and that you're vouching for its legitimacy. So, I see students doing this. I see them just taking something from ChatGPT or some other AI tool and cutting and pasting it and submitting it as their own work, putting aside the academic integrity problem with that. I think it's a huge mistake, and it can lead to some very, very significant consequences. I heard about an AI tool that was asked can you come up with 5 examples where a law professor or other legal academic had been accused of sexual harassment of a student and that this was reported in a major newspaper? And within, seconds, the AI came up with 5 examples. The first 2 of which were actually somewhat legitimate. The other 3 of which were completely fabricated. And one of them, but when this comes out, those people are being defamed. What is their recourse? Who do they sue for defamation? Do they sue the manufacturer of the AI? Do they sue the people who made the request for the information? I mean, where does this go and where does it end? And it's very, very nerve-wracking to think about the way that AI can be put forth as an example of something that is in some sense, well, it's the computer, so it must be right, or it's above reproach. Obviously, none of those things is true, at least now. And so we really need to apply, we don't need to invent new rules of legal ethics to deal with it. The existing rules will do just fine. But the problem is no one's paying attention. They're too busy trying to make their filings and drum up business and to worry about whether they should do this. But you wouldn't go about inventing something as a source, for example, as a case that doesn't exist and file it on your own. Why should you assume that a technological advance won't do that without at least having a track record? Unfortunately, the track record is going in exactly the opposite direction. So people need to pay more attention.
100% agree. Calinthia, you had your hand up next. Thank you, Professor Fisher.
Yeah, you asked, how does this happen? I do think some of it is laziness. I think some of it is, quite frankly, a lack of knowledge. I was at a presentation that the governor gave a couple of weeks ago, and he made a statement that, people shouldn't over-rely on AI because it can be wrong. The person sitting next to me, a business owner, a professional, said, no, it doesn't make up things. I use AI all the time. I use ChatGPT all the time. So I think you have to have people who are sufficiently knowledgeable on whatever they're using, AI for, to recognize, if there's a problem. If you're practicing in a legal area that you're knowledgeable in, sometimes the results or the output can be, so egregious that you automatically can look at it and know that there's a problem. I think part of it is time. If I have an assistant that works for me and I have to go through and, redo everything they do, then why do I need that assistant? So I think some of it is over-reliance, because of busy schedules. But, the Florida Bar has made it abundantly clear, that neither of those are excuses. and you can ultimately put your, your bar license on the line. If you lean on, excuse of being too busy, being, lazy, or, over reliance on an assistant. The Florida, the ethics advisory opinion 24.1 was mentioned earlier. And, we can use generative AI, but you have to still comply with all your Florida bar rule obligations when it comes to confidentiality and competency and, your fees and your supervision. So, I mean, you use it because it can be a useful tool. However, understand that those same Florida bar rules continue to exist, even if you're using ChatGPT or CoCounsel, which is Westlaw's product.
Very well. Thank you, Ms. Cullen. Yeah, Professor Tui.
Yes. Hi.
Okay.
So I think some of it might be speed or laziness or just financial gain to do it more quickly, right? However, I really think it's how good are you at prompting, and how it might be that a lot of these folks, the first time you use it, it might be great, but the number of prompts and the number of sifts you can use, the results get better, right? So in an issue of putting together a generic question, such as Professor Fisher said, that might be exactly what you get. You might have had to use the word conviction. You know what I mean? Like it just depends on how you word those prompts, because it is a large language model, right? So if your prompt is very general, you're not going to get the specificity or perhaps even the accuracy of what you might need. So sometimes we're just so. The other piece of it is I'm old enough to know about Shepard's citations, right? So when you source something, you have an ethical obligation to make sure it's accurate, right? So it's not too hard to just click in and grab the source and look at it, right? So people are submitting stuff without actually, sourcing it or Shepardizing it or validating the sourcing. And that, of course, is not an ethical violation, but it obviously can't stand. I mean, you'll lose your license over stuff like that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we're almost at the end of the webinar. So I want to present the last question, and maybe someone could answer it at a very high level, the CNN version way, due to lack of time, right? So number 4, what legal developments, domestic or international, do you believe will have the biggest impact on leadership and AI governance over the next 5 years? I repeat, what legal developments, domestic or international, do you believe will have the biggest impact on leadership and AI governance over the next 5 years? I'd like to see what your crystal balls might be telling us what 5 years from now will look like. Who wants to take a try at that question?
Well, I don't want to be a cynic, but I think that the likelihood is that not just in the United States, but internationally, the lowest common denominator for the use of AI, the development of AI, and the exploitation of AI will be using it for gain, for military purposes, and that will, I think, drive the conversation, at least internationally in particular. It won't be the professions. It won't be the medical profession, the legal profession, or any other profession at the forefront of this. That's not to say that we should just sit back and let others do the work, but I do think that there are bigger fish to fry here for governments than whether there are medico-ethical or legal ethical or business ethics ramifications to the use of AI. That may be on their list, but it's pretty far down. The other thing that I would mention is a year ago now almost, I put together a 4-day conference on AI for judges and lawyers, which was attended by people from all over the world and had a lot of very interesting perspectives. And one of the things I did for that was to take a quick look at how people have talked about AI in the past. And there is a rich tradition of science fiction writers dealing with AI, and some of them in very, very interesting ways. Just to scratch the surface, the most famous one might be Isaac Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics, and the many stories in which he used those in novels and explored some of the ethical ramifications of those laws. It's actually quite illuminating and quite fascinating. So there is a resource out there that's not only interesting, but fun to read that people might want to go back and look at.
Very well. Thank you, Professor. Dr. Jane.
Right. So since the question was also opening to the international space, so I would say the internationally the potential dominance of China. So beyond like legal, like China holds the most AI related patents in the world globally, much more than the US. And Trump administration says in its executive orders, it's a race in AI. So in 5 years, we would see like which country or which, I guess, global superpower has won the AI race. And then another thing that I'll see is the standard setting bodies. So we might not see like I don't know, UN Convention on AI. That might be more difficult to reach, but I would see the standard setting bodies in the international space. For example, ISO would have certain rules or standards set, but I would like to know, I'm curious to see like how the US or the China or which like country would have more dominance in even in that standard setting space in the future. Yes, so that's a discussion for the next seminar, I guess.
For sure, for
Yes.
sure. I'm with you, Dr. Jane. I completely agree. I was actually thinking on why don't we revise or update the Declaration of Human Rights to include technology as a basic human right? I think St. Thomas is in a great position to lead that push or that effort to have the UN update that very, very important document to make sure that in that document, it's very clear that access to ethical technology is a human right. On that note, I want to thank everyone who participated today over this fantastic webinar. It got me thinking, and I'm sure there's going to be an episode 2 and 3. So thank you to our panelists for sharing their expertise, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. Conversations like this are essential as we navigate a world where technology evolves faster than policies and where leaders are called to make decisions that reflect not only legal compliance, but also ethical responsibility. If there's only one takeaway from today's discussion, it's that ethical leadership in a digital age requires intention, vigilance, and the courage, emphasis added, to ask difficult questions. Whether you're in compliance, education, law, healthcare, or business, the responsibility to guide technology in a way that strengthens, not compromises, human dignity and trust belongs to all of us, not just one of us. We hope today's insights sparked further dialogue in your organizations and inspire you to lead with clarity, integrity, and foresight. Thank you again for being part of this very important conversation. Have a wonderful afternoon and Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Very good.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.